I never thought my own daughter would look me in the eye and call the food I lovingly prepared for her peasant garbage right in front of her wealthy friends. But what she didn't know was that one of those friends wasn't who he claimed to be, and by the next morning, she would be on her knees begging for my forgiveness. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Rosa Morales and I'm 52 years old. I came to this country from El Salvador 26 years ago with nothing but a suitcase, a heart full of dreams, and a baby girl named Vanessa growing in my belly. Her father had already abandoned us before she was even born, leaving me to navigate this new world completely alone. I didn't speak the language, I had no money, and I was terrified. But I had something more powerful than fear. I had love for my unborn child and the determination to give her everything I never had. For the past 2 decades, I've worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. During the day, I stand behind the deli counter at Martinez Market, slicing meat and cheese for customers who sometimes look right through me like I'm invisible. At night, I clean office buildings downtown, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans while the rest of the world sleeps. My hands are permanently stained from years of cleaning chemicals, and my back aches constantly, but every dollar I earned went toward one goal: giving Vanessa the best education money could buy. I sent her to private school even when it meant I had to skip meals to pay the tuition. I worked overtime every week to afford her dance classes, her piano lessons, her college applications. When she got accepted to that prestigious business school, I cried tears of joy for 3 days straight. This was it, this was the American dream I had sacrificed everything for. My daughter was going to have opportunities one could never imagine. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The little girl who used to beg me to make her abuela's pupusas every Sunday started coming home less and less. When she did visit, she would wrinkle her nose at the smell of curtido fermenting in the kitchen and ask me to open the windows. She stopped speaking Spanish to me, claiming she was too busy to remember. She started wearing expensive clothes I knew she couldn't afford on her entry-level marketing salary, and when I asked about them, she would just say they were gifts from friends. Last Tuesday evening, I was standing in my tiny kitchen, carefully shaping the masa for pupusas, the same recipe my grandmother taught me in El Salvador, the same one I had taught Vanessa when she was 7 years old. I remember her little hands trying to pat the dough flat, giggling when it stuck to her fingers. Those were some of the happiest moments of my life. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I made her favorite childhood meal, we could recapture some of that closeness we used to share. I had been looking forward to this dinner for weeks. Vanessa had actually called me, to say she wanted to spend an evening together. My heart had soared. Finally, my hardworking, successful daughter wanted to spend time with her mother. I cleaned the apartment from top to bottom, put on my one good dress, the black one I wore to her graduation, and spent my entire grocery budget for the week on ingredients. But when Vanessa walked through my door that evening, 45 minutes late, the first words out of her mouth weren't hello or I love you or even sorry I'm late. Instead, she immediately started complaining. "Mom, why does it always smell so ethnic in here?" she said, waving her manicured hand in front of her nose like she was trying to clear away smoke. "Can't you cook normal food sometimes?" I felt like she had slapped me. Normal food? This was our food. This was our heritage. This was the taste of home I had carried across borders to share with her. But I swallowed my hurt and forced a smile. "Mija, I made your favorite pupusas, just like when you were little." She looked at the perfectly golden pupusas on the plate like they were something disgusting. "I don't eat this heavy food anymore, Mom. I have to maintain my figure for work." Then she dropped a bombshell that made my blood run cold. "Actually, I need to talk to you about something. I'm bringing my new boyfriend Blake and his friends here for dinner next week." My heart leaped. She wanted to introduce me to her boyfriend. This was progress. "Oh Mija, that's wonderful. I'll make a feast, I'll prepare all our traditional dishes. I can make tamales and yuca con chicharron and—" "No," she interrupted so sharply that I actually stepped backward. "Mom, no. We can't serve them, that kind of food. They're sophisticated people. Blake comes from a very important family. His friends are all successful, educated people. Can't you just order catering from somewhere normal?" The word normal hit me like a physical blow. What was abnormal about food made with love? What was wrong with sharing our culture? But even as my heart shattered, I found myself making excuses for her behavior. "She's just nervous," I told myself. "She wants to make a good impression. She's worked so hard to build her career, of course she wants everything to be perfect. And Mom," she continued, not even noticing the tears forming in my eyes, "please don't mention that you work at the deli, okay? Just say you're taking a break from work or something. These people move in different circles." I nodded numbly, agreeing to hide who I was, hide the very jobs that had paid for her education, her opportunities, her success. She left that night without touching a single pupusa, claiming she had an early morning meeting. I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the untouched food, and for the first time in 24 years of motherhood, I wondered if I had failed completely. But as I wrapped up those rejected pupusas, something stirred deep inside me. A voice that sounded suspiciously like my grandmother's whispered, "Mija, good food brings people together. It shows them who we really are." Maybe it's time she remembered where she came from. I was going to make something they would never forget. The week that followed was pure hell. I took an unpaid day off from both my jobs, something I hadn't done in over 3 years, and spent every penny of my savings on ingredients. I wanted this dinner to be perfect, not because I believed Vanessa was right to be ashamed of our food, but because I knew in my heart that good cooking could bridge any gap between people. I made everything from scratch. Fresh masa for the pupusas, slowly simmered black beans, homemade curtido that I let ferment for days until it reached that perfect tangy bite. I prepared platanos maduros, their sweetness caramelized to perfection, and yuca with that crispy golden exterior my mother had taught me to achieve. The apartment smelled like my childhood, like love, like home. When Saturday evening arrived, I put on that same black dress and waited. My hands were shaking, not from nervousness about the cooking, but from the growing realization that I was about to meet the people my daughter valued more than her own mother. They arrived 30 minutes late. Vanessa walked in first, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I made in 2 months. Behind her came Blake, tall, blonde, with that particular type of confidence that only comes from never having to worry about money. He looked around my small apartment like he was studying an exhibit in a museum. "Everyone, this is my mother," Vanessa said, her voice strangely formal. "Mom, this is Blake, and these are his friends Jessica and Trevor." Jessica was a rail-thin woman with perfectly blown-out hair who immediately started taking photos of my apartment with her phone. Trevor wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent and kept checking his expensive watch like he had somewhere more important to be. But there was a fourth person, a quiet man in his 30s wearing simple jeans and a button-down shirt. "And this is Antonio," Blake said casually. "He works in food service, so he should appreciate this authentic experience." Antonio smiled warmly and shook my hand. "Thank you so much for having me, Mrs. Morales. Your home smells incredible." Finally, someone with manners. I felt a tiny spark of hope. I had spent hours arranging everything beautifully on my best plates, the ones I had bought for Vanessa's high school graduation party. As I brought out dish after dish, explaining the history behind each recipe, I watched their faces carefully. Blake picked at a pupusa like it might bite him back. "How rustic," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Very authentic, I'm sure." Jessica was worse. She kept photographing the food while whispering to Trevor, and I caught glimpses of her phone screen as she posted to her Instagram story. I couldn't read all the text, but I saw enough. "When your friend's mom tries way too hard," with crying laughing emojis. My cheeks burned with shame, but I kept serving, kept smiling, kept hoping that maybe once they tasted the food, they would understand. Trevor took one bite of the yuca and made a face like he'd tasted something rotten. "Interesting texture," he said, immediately reaching for his water glass. But Antonio was different. He was actually eating, really eating, asking me genuine questions about the spices I used, complimenting the perfect balance of flavors in the curtido. For a few moments, talking to him, I felt like myself again, not the embarrassing mother, but Rosa the cook, the woman who had learned these recipes at her grandmother's side. "Mrs. Morales, this is extraordinary," Antonio said, helping himself to a second pupusa. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" I was about to answer when Vanessa's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Mom, honestly, this is embarrassing." The entire room went silent. Even Jessica stopped photographing her food to stare. "We can't expect people to eat this peasant food," Vanessa continued, her voice getting louder and more desperate as she looked at Blake's disgusted expression. "It's like you're trying to prove how foreign we are." I stood frozen in my tiny dining room, holding a plate of platanos maduros that suddenly felt impossibly heavy in my hands. "I told you to keep it simple," she pressed on, her words cutting deeper with each syllable. Now everyone's going to think we're some kind of, I don't know, refugees or something. The word refugees hung in the air like poison. I thought about my journey here 26 years ago, scared and pregnant and alone. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every double shift I had worked, every time I had gone hungry so she could have lunch money for school. Blake actually nodded in agreement. Maybe next time we should just go to a restaurant, he said, not even trying to lower his voice. Jessica giggled, actually giggled, at my humiliation. I looked at my daughter's face and saw something that broke my heart completely. She wasn't just embarrassed by the food, she was embarrassed by me. By everything I was, everything I represented, everything I had given her. Without a word, I started clearing the barely touched plates. 24 years of motherhood, and this was what I had raised. A daughter who would rather die than acknowledge where she came from. But as I carried the dishes to the kitchen, I felt a gentle hand on my arm. It was Antonio. Mrs. Morales, he said quietly, could I possibly get the recipe for these pupusas? And the curtido? My sister would absolutely love to learn how to make this. His kindness in that moment of humiliation almost broke me. I nodded, tears threatening to spill over. Also, he said, pulling out his phone, would it be okay if I got your number? I'd love to talk more about your cooking techniques. You have real talent. I gave him my number, grateful for this one person who saw value in what I had spent my life perfecting. As they all prepared to leave, Antonio lingered by the door. Thank you again for this incredible meal, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. This was honestly the best food I've had in months. Vanessa's face flushed red, but she said nothing. After they left, I sat in my empty apartment surrounded by the remnants of a feast nobody had wanted, and I cried until I had no tears left. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. 47 missed calls. 236 text messages. My phone kept pinging with notifications from apps I didn't even know I had. My first thought was panic. Had something happened to Vanessa? Despite everything, she was still my daughter. My hands trembled as I unlocked my phone and saw messages from numbers I didn't recognize, from old co-workers at the deli, from neighbors I barely spoke to. Rosa, is this really you? Oh my God, you're famous. I can't believe what your daughter said to you. Famous? What were they talking about? With shaking fingers, I opened the first link someone had sent me. There on my screen was a video posted by someone named Antonio Ramirez. The profile showed a blue checkmark next to his name and numbers that made my head spin. 5.3 million followers. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was realizing who Antonio Ramirez actually was. He wasn't just some guy who worked in food service. He was the Antonio Ramirez, the celebrity chef with 12 restaurants across the country, winner of 3 James Beard Awards, host of the hit cooking show Authentic Flavors. The man whose cookbooks I had secretly bought and hidden under my bed because I couldn't afford them but dreamed of cooking like him someday. The video was titled "The Best Home Cook I've Ever Met." My heart stopped. Last night Antonio's voice came through my phone speakers. I had the privilege of experiencing the most incredible home-cooked meal of my entire career. But what I witnessed alongside that extraordinary food was something that disgusted me to my core. The video had 2 million views. 2 million people had watched this in less than 12 hours. He went on to describe every dish I had made, praising techniques I didn't even know I had mastered. He talked about the perfect fermentation of my curtido, the delicate balance of spices in my pupusas, the way I had achieved that impossible to replicate texture in my yuca that only comes from years of practice and love. But while I was experiencing this culinary masterpiece, his voice grew darker. I watched a daughter tell her mother that food made with love and tradition was peasant food. I watched her call her own heritage embarrassing. I watched her treat the woman who clearly sacrificed everything for her education and success like she was something to be ashamed of. My phone started ringing. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but somehow I knew I should answer. Mrs. Morales? This is Antonio Ramirez. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Yes. I couldn't form words. Mrs. Morales, I meant every word I said in that video. Your cooking is extraordinary. I would like to offer you a featured segment on my show, and I'm prepared to help you open a pop-up restaurant featuring authentic Salvadoran cuisine. Would you be interested in discussing this? I started crying. Not the devastated tears from the night before, but tears of disbelief, of joy, of vindication. While I was still on the phone with Antonio, I heard frantic pounding on my door. Through the peephole, I could see Vanessa, her perfect hair disheveled, her makeup streaked with tears. "Antonio, I need to call you back," I said. "Of course, but Mrs. Morales? You deserve all the recognition in the world. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." I opened the door to find my daughter in complete hysterics. "Mom, you have to fix this," she sobbed. "Blake broke up with me. His friends won't talk to me. My boss called me into her office because people are leaving negative reviews on our company page. Everyone knows who I am now." I looked at this woman who had been so ashamed of me just 24 hours ago, and I felt something I had never felt before: complete calm. "Would you like some breakfast?" I asked. "I have leftover pupusas." "Mom, this isn't a joke. You have to tell him to take the video down. Tell him I was just nervous or something." I walked to the kitchen and began reheating the same food she had called peasant garbage the night before. The same food that a world-renowned chef had just praised to millions of people. "Vanessa," I said calmly, plating the pupusa, "you said this was embarrassing food, but apparently it's good enough for a James Beard Award winner." "I never said that. I've always supported your cooking, Mom. You know I love your food." I stopped and stared at her. "Mija, the cameras were rolling. He filmed everything. The whole world saw exactly who you really are." Her face went white. "But Mom, I'm your daughter. You have to help me." I handed her an envelope I had been keeping in my dresser drawer, all her childhood photos, report cards, school awards, everything I had treasured for 24 years. "You're right, you are my daughter. But last night you made it very clear that you're ashamed of that fact. Since you're so embarrassed by where you came from, I thought you might want to return these memories to me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've accepted Antonio's offer. I'm moving to a new apartment next month. He's helping me find one near the studio where we'll film the show. I'm quitting both my jobs to focus on my cooking career. The career you told me was embarrassing." For the first time in years, I felt proud of myself. For the first time in years, I felt like the strong woman who had crossed borders with nothing but determination and love. "You taught me something important last night, Vanessa. You taught me that I don't need anyone's approval, not even my daughter's, to be proud of who I am." As she left my apartment still crying, I looked around at my small kitchen where I had spent so many years cooking with love, and I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be ashamed of who you are. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and feel free to share your story or opinions in the comments.